It's the summer of 2017. Nerlens Noel just rejected a 4-year, $70 million contract. Or did he? Was it really his decision? Fast forward a few years later and he files a lawsuit against his former agent, Rich Paul and Klutch Sports, claiming that they were unresponsive to teams trying to contact him. Basically, what happened was Noel claimed that Paul cost him $58 million in potential earnings. That $70 million contract was offered by the Mavs, quite a hefty one too, a huge overpay for Noel, but regardless, it was offered to him. I remember how shocked everyone was that he rejected it, considering he just averaged a mere 9 points and 6 rebounds. That's when the conflict started to occur, and that's why this lawsuit was brought up, which I'll talk about more in depth later. Maybe this was just a mishap, but it wasn't. It wasn't the first time Paul and Klutch Sports found themselves in some controversy. On the other hand, Klutch Sports has impacted the entire free agency landscape and brought in their own methods of negotiation and management. Maybe it's jealousy that other agents struggle climbing the ladder while Paul has the advantage of being friends with LeBron. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today let's talk everything about Rich Paul and Klutch Sports. This Noel lawsuit and their history of past conflicts, but also how they've rapidly changed the free agency game, for better or worse. Anyway, back to the Noel situation. In the 2017 offseason, Paul suggested that Noel reject the offer and instead take a 1-year deal to try and go for a $100 million max the year after, in the summer of 2018. And so Noel listened to him and passed up that $70 million offer. But after a horrendous season where he got injured and missed 30 games, Noel entered the 2018 offseason with very few suitors. Not only that, but Noel claimed that Rich Paul began to lose interest in him as a client. According to his lawsuit, Noel claimed that other teams tried to reach out to offer him something, but Paul would not respond to their calls. That's a breach of contract between the player and agent because agents are fiduciaries, meaning they have an obligation to represent their players and get the best deal possible. If Paul did not work in Noel's best interest and try as hard as possible to represent him, then Noel has the right to sue. This wasn't the first time Noel took a jab at Klutch Sports. In late 2020, he stated that he, quote, learned that Paul had a history of mismanaging and ignoring other less notable clients, such as Nerlens Noel and Shabazz Muhammad, and costing them significant money. If true, that's honestly a really bad look. Paul fired back and stated Noel owed him $200,000 in management fees, though it's a far stretch compared to what he cost Noel. Furthermore, as I mentioned earlier, it certainly wasn't the first time Paul got caught in a pickle. The year prior, in 2019, a few anonymous NBA agents contacted Ben Standig and Mike Vorkunov of The Athletic for an interview. One of them claimed that the way Klutch Sports operates in free agency is predatory and illegal. Now, I know it's this facade that it's Rich Paul, but it's really LeBron who recruits for Rich Paul. LeBron has leveraged his popularity with young players by seducing them for Klutch, and it's not serving all the players well. But for the players that are suffering, there's no repercussions. And you have to call out the players' union. They should be meeting with Rich Paul saying, "What happened here? What happened here?" If Rich Paul were a lawyer, he'd be disbarred 5 times. Ben Simmons, Darius Garland. You can seduce them, but you can't service them all, at that level with what they say they're doing. Nerlens Noel, Nerlens Noel, Shabazz Muhammad, they lost $80 million in Detroit. This is real talk. Normally, you should consider these quotes with a grain of salt, since it was another agent who made these comments. He could just be trying to get more clients and more business for himself by spewing out lies. However, because we know that even some players came out to speak negatively of Klutch, it's likely that this is true. Plus, it's rare to see players talk badly about their agents to begin with, so to have all these people talk about their bad experiences with them, maybe it's not a coincidence. As Rich Paul and Klutch Sports rapidly expanded over the years, their growth as a sports agency is unprecedented. They even started expanding to other sports, like baseball. Alex Bregman of the Houston Astros was represented by Title Sports Group, but his agency was bought out by Klutch. For a brief time, Bregman was represented by Klutch, but shortly after, Klutch announced they were doing a documentary series about the Astros' sign-stealing scandal. This made it quite an uncomfortable situation, because Bregman still played for the Astros. So he cut ties with Klutch. Another situation in 2019 where the NCAA considered new regulations to require agents to have at least a bachelor's degree, that quickly got shut down. Paul, who dropped out of college in his freshman year, was quite vocal about this, saying that this rule would disadvantage those who are underprivileged and cannot afford to go to college, specifically among people of color where the wealth disparity is quite high. It was even coined the Rich Paul rule, as the media believed it was specifically targeted towards him, to stop him from talking to college players. It happened after the incident with Darius Bazley, whom Paul convinced not to go to Syracuse and instead accept a $1 million internship with New Balance, and then immediately join the G League. To be fair, the NCAA was probably just pissed off that they couldn't get a high-caliber player, and generate revenue for the league. I'm with Paul on this one. So, with all this being said, what exactly separates Klutch Sports from other agencies? What are they doing differently that's making them so successful? In addition to what was mentioned earlier about, having connections to LeBron, when Rich Paul founded Klutch Sports in 2012, he had one goal: to empower the players. For a long time, NBA players, even superstars, had a very little influence on the upper management of the teams they played for. While many of them earn boatloads of money, they're not in control of their own destiny. However, after Paul witnessed LeBron's decision in 2010, he heard all the stuff the media said about him. We all know it was kinda egotistical of LeBron to film a 1-hour-long TV show just to announce his free agency decision. And I'd say it's okay to criticize him for that, but what drove Paul over the edge was comments like this, from Bill Simmons. "I blame the lack of a father figure in his life." Really? Did he really have to say that? Is the lack of a father figure the reason why LeBron wanted to join the Miami Heat? That doesn't make sense. Not just him, but even other teams and opposing executives jumped in on the action, calling LeBron selfish, even though he's doing what he wants to do and what's best for himself. It's not like he killed somebody, he just joined another team. This motivated Paul to leave his previous agency and create Klutch, and took LeBron with him. He wanted to produce his own brand, to empower his players, and to normalize the concept of finding their own path, without worrying what everyone else wants to see. LeBron and Paul, they go way back. They met in 2002, where LeBron saw him selling vintage sports jerseys out of the back of his truck. Over the years, they stayed in touch, and Paul eventually became part of LeBron's inner circle. You might say he got lucky, but everyone needs a little luck to get started. Despite Paul's questionable tactics, he still worked his tail off to build a successful empire. This relationship also drew criticism, as you saw earlier, with opposing agents not happy that such a high-profile player has a personal friendship with an agent who came out of nowhere. Let's be honest though, it's mostly because of jealousy. Paul can leverage LeBron's influence to benefit his own brand, while other agents can't. Over the years, he became known for being an extremely cutthroat agent. An article from The New Yorker described him as a guy, quote, known for driving hard bargains, especially on behalf of LeBron's teammates. Perhaps the most noteworthy example of his playbook was Anthony Davis. In his last season in New Orleans, Paul made a public demand for Davis to be traded. Not only did that violate the NBA rules, since Davis was still under contract, but Paul also made it very clear that he would not accept any destination except for LA. At the time, plenty of teams wanted him. Boston, New York, they were both viable options, and put out offers on the table. Due to Paul's aggressive push to get Davis to LA and his refusal to accept any other offer, both the Pelicans and Lakers had no choice but to commit to a deal. I mean, they had no choice. Davis was literally sitting on the bench and not suiting up until he got traded. An anonymous NBA GM, shocked by Paul's way of business, stated, "He is absolutely unrelenting in getting his players what they want. and he will use every means available to him to do that. Of course, Davis ended up getting punished with a $50,000 fine, but that's nothing considering they got exactly what they wanted. A trade to LA plus a $190 million contract, which Paul got a sizable piece of, in addition to more sponsorship and branding opportunities that comes with being in the LA market. This also set a bad precedent, as a year later, James Harden tried doing the same thing, demanding a trade publicly, then sitting on the sidelines until it happened. And then it happened. Again, in almost the exact same scenario as Davis, and Harden too was fined a measly $50,000. And again, he got what he wanted. This caused Adam Silver to start cracking down on stuff like this, and while he's hesitant to say if this is legal or not, he admitted that it was bad for the game. You can't just have a superstar hold his team by the throat like that, and refuse to play, despite being under contract. Isn't that what a contract is for? On the bright side, Silver and Paul have had extensive conversations in the past, and they've gotten along fine. In the near future, we should expect to see some new regulations put in place, whether it's new tampering laws or restrictions on trade demands. I don't think this could continue without tarnishing the NBA's reputation. Or maybe this will become the norm and more agents will emulate Paul's success. Anyway, that's all folks. Let me know your thoughts on Rich Paul and Klutch Sports. Do you think their methods are reasonable? Do you think the media is making a big deal out of it simply because he's got a relationship with LeBron? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.